Bacteria and viruses. How we get diseases. We learn every day at school that human beings are the kings of the planet. It's just not true. Really, bacteria and viruses are. Bacteria and viruses are so small that we need a microscope to see them. Because we can't see them with the naked eye, we often think that they are the same, but they are as different as rhinoceroses and rats. Another thing we often believe about bacteria is that they are bad for us. In fact, less than 1% of bacteria make us sick, and we need some of them so that we can stay alive. But viruses are nearly always dangerous, and some can kill us. There are about 1 trillion, or 10 to the power of 12, bacteria that live on our skin, and maybe 100 quadrillion, 10 to the power of 17, inside our bodies, up our nose, on our hair, inside our teeth, everywhere. There are 10 to the power of 14 bacteria just in our gut to help us to use the food that we eat, or digest food. If we kill all these, but that is impossible, we will die. Of course, not all bacteria are the same. There are 400 different types in and on our bodies. Bacteria don't only live in and on people, they can live everywhere. 20 or 30 years ago, scientists thought it was impossible for anything to live below 600 meters in the sea, because there is no light on the seabed, and the pressure is huge. It's the same as you sitting under 50 747 planes. But bacteria live 11 kilometers down in the Pacific Ocean. They also live in volcanoes and, we think, on the moon. Scientists found bacteria in a camera that was on the moon for 2 years. You cannot kill bacteria by freezing them. If you put bacteria in your freezer, they will sleep and then wake up when you take them out. And they are not choosy about their food. They can eat steel, chicken, sulfuric acid, H2SO4, French fries, and radioactive waste. But that's not all. Bacteria can not only live in difficult places, they can also live for very long times. We have found bacteria in cans of meat, about 80 years old. But that's nothing for bacteria. It's like Messi playing football against a primary school team. What about this? In the year 2000, American scientists found bacteria in frozen salt that was 250 million years old. They were sleeping, but became active again in a few hours. Bacteria have probably been on this planet for 3.5 billion years. Bacteria can also multiply very, very fast. A Belgian scientist thinks that 1 only one bacteria cell can make 280,000 billion new cells in 24 hours. That's 28 times 10 to the power of 13. At other times, for example when it's very cold or there is no food, bacteria can almost close down. Then some bacteria will make a new cell, only once in 500 years. When bacteria make new cells, they sometimes make a mutant. This usually dies, but sometimes it makes something useful, and then it sends this new thing to other bacteria. In other words, bacteria can share information and develop in new ways. This makes it hard to kill them because they keep changing. In short, scientists think there could be 100 quadrillion, 10 to the power of 14, tons of bacteria in the world today. That means a lot of bacteria. Bacteria are useful to human beings. They make our rubbish decay. With no bacteria, everything will stay the same. But bacteria turn food, trees, dead people and animals, and many other things into something different. We can then put this on fields, for example, to make bigger and better vegetables. Other bacteria make oxygen. Bacteria in the sea make 150 billion, 15 multiplied by 10 to the power of 10, kilograms of oxygen every year. No bacteria, no oxygen. But some bacteria sometimes also make us sick. Gangrene comes from a type of bacteria, and so does tuberculosis, or TB. Every year, 2 million people die of TB. So it's true that only 1 in 1,000 bacteria is dangerous for people. But that's enough. Bacteria are still the number 3 killer in the world. We are now looking at some bacteria to see what they do. For example, we know that bacteria in your teeth can give you a heart attack. They may also give you cancer. However, in general, bacteria are good for us. This is not true of viruses. They are never good for us. They make many serious diseases and lots of colds and flu too. There are about 5,000 different viruses in the world, and they give us smallpox that killed 300 million in the 20th century, and AIDS, which kills 2 million people every year at the moment. But there are worse diseases than smallpox and AIDS. In the First World War, from 1914 to 1918, 21 million people died. Spanish flu, a virus, killed the same number in 4 months in 1919. This disease killed maybe 50 to 100 million people in 3 years all over the world. In fact, 80% of American soldiers in the First World War did not die fighting. They died of a flu virus. Of course, Spanish flu stopped killing people in the 1920s, nearly 100 years ago. So we don't need to worry. But we now know that the first person to die of AIDS was in England in 1959. Only 3 or 4 people died, and then the virus stopped. Nobody knows why. We also don't know why it started again in the 1980s and why it has not stopped. Viruses need to go from one animal to another, between people, or often between animals and people. They do this in different ways. Everybody knows that you get AIDS from sex, and you give someone a cold by coughing or sneezing. This is what happens when you get a cold virus. The virus attacks your body. The white blood cells start to attack the virus. They also start to make more and more white blood cells. This is what makes us feel sick. The body tries to get the virus out by coughing, sneezing, from a runny nose, and so on. Other people take in the virus through their mouth, nose, etc., from the air, or by kissing, or sometimes by touching. So, how do we stop viruses and bacteria? The problem is that we often use antibiotics for both. But this medicine is no good for viruses. The best way to fight viruses is by vaccination. When we are at school, the nurse comes and gives us a piece of sugar with medicine on it, or an injection. This can make us a little sick, but only a little. The good news is that we will not get this sickness very badly later, and perhaps die. Why? It's because the medicine on the sugar or injection gives us a very small amount of the disease. Our white blood cells start to fight the virus and kill it. But when the virus is finished, the body still remembers the virus, and so if it comes again, the body is ready. Another way to stop serious diseases from viruses is not to live with animals. Many farm animals get sick from viruses that can also travel to people. Smallpox can start in cows and then make people sick, for example. A few years ago, many people died of bird flu. It came from chickens in China. AIDS comes from monkeys in Africa. These days, the virus can go from one country to another, from Asia to America, from Europe to the Middle East, very easily and very fast. It travels with us on planes, of course. A virus that is not so dangerous to Chinese people can kill Arabs. This happened in the 15th century, when people from Spain and Portugal went to South America. They were not sick, but the viruses in their bodies killed 90% of South American Indians. We cannot give vaccinations against bacteria. Here, we need to use antibiotics, like penicillin. This kills bacteria. In fact, it killed bacteria in the past. These days, it is not so useful. Why? The problem is that doctors give us penicillin for every little problem: colds, serious viruses, bacteria, and so on. Farmers even give animals food with penicillin in it to stop them getting sick. Now you remember that bacteria can change easily and get new information from other bacteria cells. This is also true of viruses. They can then change their DNA so that penicillin and other antibiotics cannot fight them. We need to use less antibiotic medicine so that we are ready for new diseases and can fight them when they come, because they are coming.